this is going to be an explanation of how I started my yoga practice and sort of where it took off and for how long I've been doing yoga on and off and so forth. So I would say to get some tea and just, sit back. So my aunt, who is my dad's sister, my dad has quite a few sisters. But one of them, she was kind of introducing me when I was in the school to different kinds of health stuff. So she was like introducing me to vegetarian kind of foods, and she was also introducing me to yoga. And when I was in the 8th grade, my aunt was doing yoga, so she recommended my mom and me to sort of also take part in some of those classes, for beginners. And I was like, yeah, I want to try it. So me and my mom, we decided to start once a week on these yoga classes. And the teacher, she was like this, inspirational person, because she was living in the North Sweden, and she was from Canada. But her sort of ancestors, and also I think her parents, and even in her early childhood, she had been living in India. And she was vegan, and she had been practicing yoga with some of these really great yoga masters in India. And she was just, a living face of yoga, so you could really tell that she had been practicing for quite some time. And we were doing yoga once a week, and most of these yoga classes we were just, going over the Surya Namaskara and doing some basic kinds of yoga poses. And I remember that I fell asleep in end of each of these yoga classes. So when we did the Savana Asana, the corpse kind of pose where you're just lying flat on the floor, I always used to fall asleep. And after that session of, I think it was maybe 8 times of yoga, I basically stopped with the practice. But, yoga was something that was interesting to me, So then I had the chance to meet some different people, over the time who actually was practicing and doing yoga. And it wasn't before I actually moved to Dubai, and I was maybe 20 years old, that I actually came into more of this yoga practice again. And that was just an accident that I actually got into it. But I started, with this whole YouTube movement and stuff, I started to follow some teachers on YouTube, who were doing yoga. And because I sort of wanted to incorporate more healthy kind of lifestyle choices and stuff, because at that time I was doing quite a lot of night clubbing, and I was living in a completely different type of setting, so I was doing a lot of these night clubbings and stuff, so my lifestyle when I was 18 and 19 and until I was like 20 wasn't very healthy at all, However, I remained vegan, or not vegan, but vegetarian in that time, So yoga was like, something that was bringing some other kind of healthy type of lifestyle, So then I got really inspired, and I did a yoga instructor training as well in Dubai, which was really nice. And I sort of, stopped with this whole nightclub thing, because either way I was kind of finished with it, So I became a lot more like, healthy type of individual. And then I also started in the university, so I sort of, after my sort of off years, doing other stuff and working and so forth in Dubai and living this crazy kind of nightclub life, I went back to university and I took up a health coaching degree, you know. So at that time, when I was starting in the university, I basically was doing some real estate, and at that time I met one co-worker, and she was actually a yoga teacher. She was doing Kundalini, and once I sort of got out of that whole workplace and so forth, me and this Kundalini yoga teacher, we actually ended up moving together, you know, like sharing a studio in Dubai, because for some reason we wasn't talking like so much, you know, but for some reason once I was in the search of a new place to live, I just felt like I should ask her, you know, if she was, you know, knew anything about places to rent and so forth. And she actually turned out she was in the need of finding a place, you know, because she had a breakup with her boyfriend. So she needed to find a place in Dubai to live in. So, and she already had like a clue of a place, you know, but she needed a roommate, you know. So me and her, we moved together into a studio, and she had a new boyfriend, so she wasn't always living in this place, you know, but yet we were living there together. And at this point, we sort of, you know, she was doing her Kundalini yoga teacher thing, and I was also studying, you know, and doing some other stuff. And I also got very inspired by her, you know, to actually do this whole yoga thing, you know. So I started with yoga practice when I was living together with her, and I did yoga every day, you know, and got a really nice kind of practice, you know, on a daily basis, you know. And then I had a food poisoning, and almost, you know, I was almost dead from that. And because she was this sort of energy type of person who doing Kundalini, she did something, and I can't really tell what, you know, but she, when I was like lying on the floor and I had like 40 something Celsius degrees of fever, and I was like passing out, you know, and I was like feeling really, I was like, you know, having really bad food poisoning. And I was like, I can't even get to the hospital in this state. She basically put her hands on me and she started to do some kind of energy work. And all of a sudden the fever just went away, and I was like, what did you do, you know? And then, I mean, then I started to, you know, throw up and all these things, but that's another kind of, you know, story for probably for no one to listen to. So yeah, I started doing yoga practice in that time, and that's also when I went vegan, because after having a such food poisoning, I was like, I cannot continue eating any kind of animal product, you know. And then I sort of have continued doing more yoga, you know, on a regular basis, depending on wherever I have been. But sometimes there has been very limited space also for me to actually do yoga, and certain periods of time have been very kind of, you know, little time that I actually been able to do yoga. But I have tried to keep it up as much as possible, and I'm very happy about it, you know. But I think the most important thing when you coming and you are interested in starting with a yoga practice is to find some teacher, you know, that is inspiring, you know. And this doesn't need to be someone who is, you know, going to be your every practice teacher, you know. Just someone who is inspiring, you know, in the way she or he or something else, you know, is teaching yoga, you know, or practicing yoga. Because a yoga teacher is, you know, most yoga teachers have the same kind of set of understanding, or just, you know, they can guide you through different sequences, even if they have some different styles and stuff. But a yoga practice can be very individual. So each individual who's practicing yoga is going to have a different form of practice depending on where they are on their own path, you know. And when you're finding a person who is inspiring in their own yoga practice, And that is what's going to make the difference here, you know, because you need to have something that is inspiring, you know, to actually want really to start to take up that kind of practice. And yeah, so what else should I tell about this, you know? I think that, you know, a yoga practice, as you know, for example, this Kundalini yoga teacher said, and I think even this woman who I met when I was in the 8th grade, who was a yoga teacher, I think most of these yoga teachers I ever have met, they have like said that, you know, if you ever start a yoga practice, you are always going to come find your way back into it, you know. If you get out of your practice and, you know, life events and stuff come in between, you're always going to find a way back and start with it again, you know, take up the practice. And I mean, that's like when I was faced with this recent car accident last year in 2017, I got out of my practice because I physically felt like I don't want to do any kind of things that are placing any, you know, extra weight or, you know, strain on my neck. So I was out of the practice for a few months just to sort of, you know, allow for some healing and recover to, you know, take place of my neck. But after that, I got back into the practice, and I think that, you know, the will and this sort of, you know, this whole, yeah, the whole will and sort of the desire to actually do yoga, it has to come from within, you know. So, I mean, as I said, when you're finding a person who is going to initially kind of inspire you to take up a practice, then that's just going to last for a short time. But then eventually you need to find, you know, your own kind of inner desire to actually maintain that practice. And that's also how it is with most kind of habits and stuff. And the thing is, when you're starting with a yoga practice, the effects that you're getting from the practice are going to keep you wanting to continue with it. It's the same thing if you go vegan. Like if you go vegan and you start to feel more like fresh and these things, you're going to want to continue with it, you know, because you start to see that the effects are outweighing the other things that you were doing before. And also about yoga is that a lot of the focus, you know, on yoga is on these yoga asanas, the poses, the physical expression, you know, of yoga. But if you are really interested, and I think this can be a good idea to do, and I actually did a lot of research on this, you know, before I took on this whole yoga instructor training, and that was that I researched, you know, the theory, the concept of yoga, you know, how yoga is sort of explaining, you know, different concepts about energies, the consciousness, and you know, the breath, and why you should do certain things in yoga, because that sort of also is strengthening your own beliefs in why you're doing certain things, you know. Because if you're just going to do these physical expressions of yoga in the asana practice, then you may be going to see some physical benefits from it, or some, you know, mental clarity or calmness or whatever. But I mean, to understand the reasons to why you're doing these asanas, that will only come if you actually taking the time to look into the theories behind yoga, because yoga has a whole philosophy. There is like a whole kind of philosophy behind yoga, and it is like super old. I think it's like 2000 years old. So I mean, yoga, even if it's like a new kind of concept in the more Western Europe and in the US, yoga is like the most old and most kind of, you know, old concept when you're looking into the Eastern kind of places where yoga has been practiced for such a long time already. So there is so much philosophy that has been written on yoga in this time, you know, and I would definitely suggest to have a look on some of those things, because it really will give you a better kind of concept on, for example, the yoga mudras. Why are we doing the yoga mudras? Why do you keep a drishti in different asanas? And why is it so important to connect the breath with the movement? And what is all about meditation, and what is the whole concept about, asanas, and the way it sort of connects to the daily life and so forth. So yeah, I hope this was just giving some perspective over the, how I came into my yoga practice. I mean, it's also like, if you are meant to be doing yoga, you're going to find your way into yoga. Yoga will find you, you don't have to. This is also a concept, about the yoga teacher, because before I moved in with this Kundalini yoga teacher, before I lived together with her, I was thinking that, everyone was saying, like, when I was doing this yoga instructor training, that once it's time for you, you're going to find the yoga teacher for you, And I was like, well, I have no idea who that would be at this point, But apparently I was living together with one all of a sudden, and that was not my plan initially, So you never know when that yoga teacher is going to show up. And as well, it might shift over time. Maybe you're going to meet different yoga teacher that's going to be inspiring you and teaching you in certain timings, And that's also part of the journey as you are progressing. And it can also be important to understand that, the same yoga teacher is maybe not going to be serving you throughout your whole entire yoga practice, because you're going to be in different types of development stages and stuff, and it all is very dependent upon your own path, so you cannot really compare development with someone else. You have to take it exactly in the context of your own path in life, and that means that different individuals, yoga teachers, are going to depart in the different stages, in different timings. So it also to sort of accept that these yoga teachers, they may show up, they may show up, and it's just to, to take in whatever kind of teaching they may have, to offer at a specific time. And I mean, there is also so many different forms of yoga, and I'm not going to go into all of the different yoga types, because that's like such a long kind of thing. And I mean, I guess some people say that you will find one yoga practice, for example, Kundalini or Hatha yoga or Vinyasa yoga or whatever, and that you will sort of stick to it. But I think it is the opposite, I think that you may will be practicing partly Vinyasa and partly Kundalini in your, in your regular practice, and you can actually choose to take whatever you want from these practices, and add them together. The most strict kind of yoga is probably Ashtanga, because Ashtanga has like a set of, when it comes to the asanas, like do this and do this and do this and you reach here. So not all other forms of yoga is going to have that kind of structure. And I mean, there is pros and cons of having super structure in certain things, because you have to at least remember that the asana is going to take a different expression in each individual, because you have a different set of, things that are unique to you, but if you enjoy Ashtanga, I mean, I myself read the whole book on Ashtanga by one of the one of these really lovers of Ashtanga, and it was interesting. There was so much about the anatomy, and yeah, so yoga is like a whole system, but as with any kind of system, I would also say that you shouldn't just absorb and swallow all of the concepts, Think for yourself and feel in if it's really something that is, working for you, because some things may going to make more sense to you later, or is maybe just never going to make sense. And that's okay, you know, because not everything is for, you know, it's not, everything is not necessarily to actually be on the path that you are on, you know. So yeah,